The 16th century marked a period of profound and irreversible transformation for Europe as a whole. It was a period of extraordinary dynamism and great upheaval. This century is inextricably linked to the advent of the Protestant Reformation and the subsequent reaction of the Catholic Counter-Reformation. These movements were not only theological but had far-reaching repercussions. Their implications were profoundly political, redrawing alliances and borders across the continent. They challenged centuries of tradition and consolidated power. Europe witnessed a radical upheaval of its social and political order. Long-held certainties were called into question, ushering in new eras of uncertainty. These events laid the foundation for centuries of conflict and significant change. Their legacy shaped European identity long after the century. The Protestant Reformation was sparked by Martin Luther in 1517. This Augustinian friar started a movement that would change history. His actions represented a radical break with the Roman Catholic Church. He questioned the authority of the Pope and traditional doctrine. Luther harshly criticized the sale of indulgences. He displayed his 95 Theses on the door of the castle church in Wittenberg, a symbolic but powerful gesture. He proposed a new theology centered on the principle of faith alone, sola fide. According to Luther, salvation was achieved only by divine grace, not by works. He also strongly supported the principle of scripture alone, sola scriptura. The Bible, not ecclesiastical tradition, was to be the sole source of religious truth. His ideas spread with astonishing rapidity, aided by the invention of printing. The pamphlets and translations of the Bible reached a wide audience. These new doctrines found fertile ground in a Europe tired of ecclesiastical abuses. The corruption of the clergy and the worldliness of the church were sources of great discontent. Luther's words responded to the deep desire for spiritual renewal that permeated society. Many were seeking a more authentic and personal faith. The German princes saw the Reformation as a strategic opportunity. It allowed them to escape the authority of Emperor Charles V and the Roman Church. Adherence to Protestantism allowed the confiscation of church property. This enriched the princes' coffers and increased their power over the territory. However, the embrace of Protestantism inevitably led to armed conflicts. The religious division resulted in a series of fratricidal wars. A significant example of conflict was the one between the Schmalkaldic League. This alliance of Protestant princes opposed the Catholic emperor. The culmination of these clashes was reached with the Peace of Augsburg in 1555. This treaty attempted to stabilize the situation, but at a high cost. The Peace of Augusta established the principle of whose kingdom, his religion. Each prince could impose his own religion on his subjects in his territory. This fundamental principle divided Europe into Catholic and Protestant states. Coexistence was often precarious and religious intolerance became the norm. Religious fragmentation fueled international tensions for centuries to come. Religion became a determining factor in relations between states. Faced with the growing spread of Protestantism, the Roman Catholic Church reacted forcefully. This reaction is known as the Counter-Reformation or Catholic Reformation. It was a complex and multifaceted process aimed both at the repression of heresy and at internal renewal. The Church sought to reassert its authority. The heart of the Counter-Reformation was the Council of Trent, convened in several sessions. Its goal was to redefine Catholic doctrine and reform the Church. The Council aimed to reform the Church from within, correcting the abuses it had denounced. It sought to strengthen clerical discipline. The foundations of Catholic tradition were firmly reaffirmed. The authority of the Pope and the bishops was reaffirmed against Protestant claims. The validity and number of the 7 sacraments were confirmed. Their importance as channels of divine grace was once again emphasized. The Council reaffirmed the central role of the clergy as intermediaries between God and the faithful. The ecclesiastical hierarchy was vigorously defended. To improve the preparation of priests, seminaries were established, and clergy education became a fundamental priority. Efforts were made to curb ecclesiastical abuses by condemning nepotism and simony. Stricter rules for the conduct of the clergy were introduced. Alongside doctrinal renewal, the Counter-Reformation was characterized by a strong repression of heresy. The Church moved to eradicate all forms of dissent. To this end, the Inquisition, an ecclesiastical court, was strengthened. Its task was to investigate and judge those suspected of heresy. The Inquisition persecuted and condemned those deemed heretics or devotees of magical practices. Thousands of people were subjected to trials and harsh, sometimes extreme punishments. The Index of Prohibited Books was also established. This list prohibited the reading of works considered dangerous to the Catholic faith. The Counter-Reformation strengthened the Church's orthodoxy and internal discipline. However, it also contributed to a climate of intolerance and fear. Religious tensions did not remain confined to council halls or theological debates. They erupted into bloody wars that devastated all of Europe. Faith became a pretext for conflicts over power, hegemony, and territory. Nations divided and clashed in the name of God. France was the scene of a long and brutal civil war between Catholics and Huguenots. The Huguenots were French Calvinist Protestants, an influential minority. These conflicts, known as the French Wars of Religion, lasted for decades and had a devastating impact on the stability of the kingdom. The culmination of this violence was the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. Thousands of Huguenots were killed in Paris and other cities. This tragic event marked the height of religious violence in France. It symbolized the hatred and intolerance that had engulfed the nation. Peace was achieved only with the Edict of Nantes in 1598, promulgated by Henry IV. It granted limited religious tolerance to the Huguenots. The Spain of Philip II emerged as the leading champion of the Counter-Reformation, and the ruler was a fervent Catholic and a staunch defender of orthodoxy. Philip II championed the Catholic cause throughout Europe. His foreign policy was strongly influenced by religious motivations. He fought tirelessly against the Protestants in the Netherlands. These territories, under Spanish rule, rebelled for religious and political reasons. He actively supported Catholics in France against the Huguenots. He saw Catholic France as a bulwark against Protestant expansion. His religious policy was characterized by dogmatic intransigence. He tolerated no deviation from the Catholic faith. His desire for political hegemony merged with his religious mission. This contributed to further destabilizing Europe, already troubled by conflict. His actions, such as sending the Armada against Protestant England, prolonged religious conflicts. These came at a very high human and economic cost. Philip II's Spain, though powerful, found itself immersed in a whirlwind of wars and rebellions. Faith was both its strength and its curse. The Reformation and Counter-Reformation were events of epochal significance for 16th century Europe. They redefined the religious, political, and cultural landscape of the continent. Religious division and new political dynamics profoundly affected European history. The dream of a Europe united under a single faith vanished forever. These movements left a lasting and complex legacy. Their effects were felt for centuries, shaping nations and identities. They decisively influenced the social, cultural, and political development of the following centuries. The religious wars laid the foundation for future concepts of sovereignty and tolerance. Understanding this period is fundamental to understanding modern Europe. Its roots lie in these intense centuries of change and conflict.